Hello, I'm a lemon cake, and today I've brought to you a brand new mod for EU4. You may know me already as the creator of such inspirational mods as small balance updates for Poland, Prussia, and Russia. However, today I'll be doing something a bit more serious and honestly quite a bit more challenging than before, with the creation of a Skaven Splinter mod. I am actually quite a big fan of Warhammer Fantasy and the Warhammer series in general, and as a little tribute, I have created a mod. Basically, a small contingent of Skaven annoy a wizard a bit too much, and he casts banishment at 9th level, and sends him over to the most inhospitable, lifeless terrain possible. So of course they end up in 15th century Siberia. Whether that is a boon to the Skaven or a bust will be determined by you, since you will probably be taking over the country. And with that, let's go over the mod. The mod itself adds the Skaven Splinter itself, as well as a brand new religion, brand new culture for them, brand new religion as mentioned before, Skaven Ideas, as well as a Skaven Idea group, and quite a few other features in it, including brand new mission trees, a whole brand new government with the states, and fun and games for the whole family. So, with that out of the way, let's load into the Skaven, and let's take a look at what we'll be dealing with. Right, after turning down the music a little bit, because I did that introduction having to shout across it, would have redone it, but hey, I am lazy. Let's actually take a look through the mod now. So, as you do arrive in this situation, you're presented with two options for the Skaven Arrival mod difficulty selection, as it were. I know, pretty strict. So for the starting option, you can take no additional challenges, you gain 1 prestige, and you are set on your way. It's bad enough as it is. However, if you're feeling brave, you may state that if you wish to defeat me, you must first train for another 1,000 years, and you get this modifier until the end of the game, as well as 100 prestige for just being brave. Now, this modifier isn't actually going to, well, pretty brutal, it doesn't actually last until the end of the game. You do have a custom mission tree to get rid of it in stages, and I think it's probably a good place to start by, well, actually no, that's a bad place to start. We'll get back to that mission tree in a bit. But just bear in mind, this modifier you will pick up and get rid of it. Another thing to bear in mind with this modifier is the first mission in the line to get rid of it requires you to have this modifier, otherwise you can't do that mission to get rid of the modifier. It doesn't lock you out of the rest of your mission tree, but it locks you out of a branch of your mission tree. And the very final mission requires that branch being completed. Therefore, if you wish to 100% the mission tree, as it were, you will need to do it in the hard mode version of this. So for that and demonstration purposes, we'll be picking up with this modifier right at the start. Well, let's take a look at our capital. We have a brand new trade good, Warpstone. It is trading at 10 whole ducats, so basically as good as coal. And speaking of coal, you can actually build a furnace on it, because furnaces require coal or warpstone to be built, but that is the manufactory for warpstone. However, owning warpstone gives you a monthly devastation tick, so you better invest in a fort if you don't want to be devastated from all the explosions from the warpstone here. Originally, this was meant to be a 3 dev province, but I found that start to be way too brutal, even for most, for the more experienced players. So in the idea of keeping it at least playable, I did buff up the starting development to 10. Anyway, with that out of the way, let's take a look at our government. In terms of our rulers, not much. We have full localization for Skaven names and icons and everything. However, I couldn't make any portraits. I'm not that good at art, so there's that. Regardless, nameless and everything is sorted. You do have a fun custom starting ruler. He's a bold, greedy man, which is a pretty good description of the Skaven in general, I feel like. Anyway, take a look at our government. We are a unique government called a tribe, which we'll be taking a look at later. We do have horde mechanics for both tribal conquest CB, and we, as a horde of Skaven, do worse than forests and mountains, taking 25% shock damage much like normal hordes, as well as dealing an extra 25% in open plain because of our way to overwhelm things with our whole Skaven masses. So, with that, we will move on swiftly to take a look at our, I guess probably a good time now to take a look at our government then. So, we begin with a Tier 1 reform, the tribal administration of our government. Now, being the Skaven itself means we probably can't accept a lot of people. So we have -10 promoted cultures from having Skaven administration as the base, as just the baseline. But the first reform, the Splinter Clan. is where most of our customers comes from. So we're not very good at developing. Plus 50% dev costs for just existing. You don't want to build cities. But we, of course, have 100% more force limit and natural manpower modifier for just being Skaven. We also give a huge amount of attrition to enemies and take much less attrition ourselves. Our tech cost, however, we're not very good at innovating, is much higher, and we're not exactly organized, so our discipline takes a massive 20% hit. And yes, combined with this, we are actually running a very nice 65% discipline. It should be 60, but we have full Horde Unity, another mechanic that we, the Skaven, use. And yes, we can raise. To get back to the modifiers here, however, we are a bit better defending our forts, and we have a lot more supply limit because we are used to fielding such large armies. People aren't very happy to be under our rules, so get a bit more years of separatism, but at least we loot faster. Innovations like what the hell a renaissance is do take our time to reach us, and our disorganization hinders our movement somewhat. But at least reinforcing our troops is much, much cheaper, running 50% reinforcement cost. Now, cavalry in this mod, because I do have a custom tech group and custom units, are instead known as the champions of our Skaven troops. So instead of being able to run 50% of our army as champions, we can only run 25% before we start getting debuffs. Don't worry, there's a way to address that later if you want to have your glorious cavalry armies. And of course, our leaders are much cheaper because we're Skaven and we're not exactly investing much in their training. But that is our base reform. There are 4 more reforms here. Some of them in varying degrees of powerfulness. For example, to bring disease, which gives you some years separatism and culture conversion cost reduction. Or to bring destruction, which makes the AE impact of us go up, but it makes our cores cheaper and get us more mono points from raising. Other things include things like centralizing power, for giving some more yearly Horde Unity and construction time and cost reduction, or expanding the clan system for better and more troops. I will let you explore and pick which tiers of this you'd want to go ahead and pick. We do have a custom estate. We have the clan system, they have custom loyalty and privileges. One of them that I will immediately highlight gives you a flat plus 10 force limit, which if you wanted to expand early, something I would recommend given your force limit suffers quite a bit from having Horde Devastated, and outside of numbers you have not a lot going for you, especially if you pick up the Horde Devastated modifier. So yep, custom clan system, custom estate there. Take a look at our religion. We are the Horde Rat. It gives us plus gen rest because of our constant bickering, but there is no such thing as an unjust demand for us. So all unjust demands are free for us. So, let's take a look at that, however, as each ruler can pick a deity, and he has picked from 3 options. Either he can pick Death, for 25% raise in power gain, or Disease, for more years of separatism and culture conversion cost. You can see that starting to stack up with the first reform. Or Disorder, which gives you a bit more unrest reduction, but again, doesn't help our stability situation. Which brings us to another thing. Being a Skaven, of course, just having the Skaven administration does increase the stab cost by an extra 50%. Right. That is that sorted. We do have a custom culture group. Oh, and we do have a promise modifier here, the Warpstone Monopoly. We're currently the only tag in the world that can produce Warpstone. If a non-Skaven tag, and let us remove tag meter for a moment, discovers Warpstone, we will lose this modifier. So this is something we may want to prevent other tags getting Warpstone. Now, where can you find Warpstone? Well, let's take a look at trade goods. It can be found in Siberia, our native waste, and there's some of it in Indonesia, but beyond that, there's not much Warpstone around. Some of you may have pointed out that these people can migrate randomly around and just land on Warpstone, which would be kind of unfair if they do that. So for that purpose alone, they're also excluded from the calculation of any tag that isn't us or these 4 that gets their hands on Warpstone. We'll pop the event that will remove the Warpstone monopoly for us. Something you may want to be interested in keeping. Right. Well, that is that. So that's the Warpstone sorted out. Trading in Warpstone, being it a very powerful fuel, gives you 25% goods produced. However, that's going to be, well, quite achievable, but trust me, you will need it. Your economy is not in a good state. Right, that was quite a bit of an introduction to that. We do have custom units here. Your Skaven slaves at the start are absolutely god-awful, having 1 offensive shot bit. Your Skaven slaves. By Tech 5, you get some Skaven Slingers, having at least a defensive fire and defensive shot pip, but not much beyond that. And by Tech 30 and later techs, you get at least some reasonable infantry. However, in general, your infantry is going to be pretty awful. What are, however, good, and you have good pips on, are your cavalry. These have some pretty good pips, especially for their tech levels. Especially by getting to Tech 28, you run a pretty nice surplus of pips at 24 pips. which is pretty good for cavalry. Western cavalry only has 22 pips, for example. But there we go. Right, that is that introduction done. Oh, and of course this modifier comes from a Horde Devastate, which again is a modifier I can get rid of. So let's talk about that now, your missions. You get rid of it. So the first mission on the left will be to scavenge an army, getting 20,000, giving you a general, some morale, and some land maintenance and reinforcement cost, further debuffs. Second mission requires you to be either in an offensive war against Solon, or own the core province of this thing to ambush our neighbours, giving you some manpower and a bunch of splender for taking the aggressive route. And then, if you build your army to 60% of force limit and have that army be equal large to 50,000, you will be able to expand, have a warband expanding. Well, expand the warband, giving you some more morale and fire damage and shock damage received. The reason behind that being, well, you know, your warband can now take a bit more firepower given how large they are. After that, of course, you can assemble a great warband if you have an army equal to 100,000, and you'll get the warband marching with 20% morale, some siege ability, and reinforcement speed. After this, of course, this is an optional mission not required for the final mission. You can modernize the warband. If you have at least 0 discipline, or have 50% army tradition and 60 army tradition and at least 50% professionalism, you can pop warband modernized, giving you 10% discipline, a bunch of morale, land, fire damage, and shock damage until the end of the game. That does require, by some miracle, either getting your discipline to 0 or getting a professional army with good army tradition. Best of luck with that. Again, given your discipline debuffs. It's doable, but it's not going to be easy. And once you do get that, you can get the rest easy with some more discipline. For that, on this line here, we have our economic missions. We need to gather our resources, get ourselves to 4.2 income, which is going to give us 50% dev cost for 5 years, to be able to at least dev a tiny bit for 5 years, given our massive line of debuffs. After that, we get Warpstone mining. It's going to require having a total monthly income of more than 10, having 100 ducats and having 20k manpower in the bank. This will allow us to lose those 100 ducats and 20,000 manpower and get Warpstone mining for 10 goods produced until the end of the game. After which we'll need to build a war chest for 1,000 ducats to gain some monarch points, and then we can attempt to establish a functioning economy. This will require us to have the government rank of empire, this does highlight Asia, because of course it does, because yeah, you need to basically become an empire, get 50 income, and trade at least 3 things. So there we go, and for that we will gain 2 years of income. So there we go. Right. The middle is the Conquest Missions. First of all, we need to establish ourselves in the Siberian Waste nonetheless, but establish ourselves at least somewhat. Grow by 20 development, that gives us some more early monarch points. After that, we need to grow by 100 development and gather a homeland, giving us a bunch more monarch points, after which we need to forge a country, grow development by 200, and as you can guess, get more monarch points. After which we need to forge an empire, total development growing by at least 1,000, and we gain a huge bank of monarch points for forging that empire. But, of course, before we get to our final mission, the World Dominion, we will need to recover our modifiers. Now, this first mission, there we go, have the modifier Horde Devastated. It's a requirement. We'll also need to save 200 of each monarch point to remove Horde Devastated and gain Horde Ravaged. It's an upgrade, as you can see, we gain 5% more discipline, 5% more admin efficiency, our production efficiency, national tax decreases. Just good stuff all around. But we also gain desperate taxation. We get a stab hit to declare war, but we at least get some yearly tax income for the next 10 years. After that, of course, we'll need to gather some land, have 100 development, and once we do that, we can get rid of the next modifier. After that, we'll need to establish a capital. 200 development in owned provinces. Our capital will need to have at least 20 development, and it starts at 10, so it needs at least 10 pillagers or devs. And it needs to be prospering, at which point we will have a horde weakened. A much greater step down in the next duration. Right. Moving swiftly on now to recovering the horde, to finally pop it, and this is why Asia is highlighted. We will need to own 100 provinces on the continent of Asia. We will need to have a monthly income balance of more than 100, have 200,000 men, and 500 development. After which we'll be able to get a horde recovered, getting us some nice monarch points and finally getting rid of all of our debuffs. This is a requirement for this mission. But of course there's also a religious side to the Skaven, and for that we'll need to start by remembering the rat. We will need to build at least 1 temple, giving us some missionaries and missionary strength for the first 10 years. Then we need to grow our faith, get 10 temples and at least 50% religious unity. After which we'll have our faith grow, giving us some manpower towards the true faith. However, the next mission we will need to avenge the insult. You see, as the description says, some have misguided views on what the Horde Rat or the Rat is. Some call him a Tungri, a Tenri, and we should have also heard some referring to Red himself as an Ishush, but so-called Emperors of China refuse to acknowledge the Red's existence under any name, so we need to teach them a lesson they won't forget. So this will give us 300 splender, and what we need to do is make sure the Ming doesn't exist, or we have pillaged the capital state of Ming. And that will give us 300 splender. After we've done that, we can build 50 temples to establish our faith, giving us faith established and more missionaries and tolerance for another 10 years. After we've done all that, there is an optional mission on the side here to acquire the Horned Rat's blessing. We will need to have 1,000 ducats and 500 of each monarch point. We'll be able to spend 1,000 ducats for each monarch point to get the blessings of the Horned Rat until the end of the game, making our infantry and cavalry a bit better, giving us some tolerance to the true faith and more land fire and shock damage. So there we go. The final mission is to grow by 10,000 development and complete all 5 of these missions, giving you 1,000 splendor. And if you are here from the event challenge on the EU4 Discord, this is what you're aiming for. Complete this mission on the earliest possible date. Right, I think that is enough for introductions, and that is the mod. There will be a link to the Steam Workshop, and it's also available if you would like to search for it on the Paradox launcher. Although uploading to that I found a bit more unique, shall we say, as a challenge. But it should be there as well, if that is something that you want to check out through that. Anyway, this has been the Skaven Splinter. I've been Lemon-Cake, and I'm going to see you in the next video. Hopefully not in the next 9 months. Won't be a Lemon-Cake video without me forgetting something. The ideas. Skaven's custom ideas. 20% province war score cost and core creation as our openers. Sorry, core creation cost minus 20% and province war score cost. And our finisher giving us monthly spender. We do get Siberian frontiers and the ability to automatically discover provinces when built as soon as you get 3 ideas. So, you know, time to pick up Siberia. We get 3 national unrest reduction here to offset this mess. We get 50% national manpower and force limit because we are Skaven. We will support our champions for cavalry combat ability. We get some construction cost and time here, which again stacks very well with this one for another 30% here for 50% total reduction. However, the option here is, of course, armies and land attrition, so it's going to be an interesting ask to see which people will go down. We get a missionary and missionary maintenance cost here, and we get a looting speed and raising power gain over here. Now, of course, we also have Skaven Ideas fully localized with custom policies. So as you can see, there's quite a few here. So for example, stealing foreign tactics if you go Skaven Espionage, for some more discipline in your professionals. But there we go. Nothing for you to explore, but Skaven Ideas include 50% more manpower. They are of course fully localized. 50% more force limit. Some more reinforcement speed, not as good as a defensive reinforcement speed, but some more of that. A bit more dev cost, because you know you want to dig some burrows to live in. Goods produced modifier for Warpstone, land fire damage from using Warpstone weapons, and Warpstones for domestic use for more production efficiency, quite a bit of it in fact, but Warpstone is good. The finisher here makes your unique estate to the clan 20% more loyal, or the clans 20% more loyal, and gives you 25% more raising power gain. So there we go, that's the Skaven Ideas. And as you can also tell, full list of other policies you can combine with, like diplomatic ideas for another 10% province war score reduction. If you really want to go a diplomatic Skaven, that's all about negotiating how it's time for them to die. And other things, again, included. For example, if you would like to go expansion ideas, you can get more global settlers to expand across Siberia faster. And, you know, humanist for drafting non-Skaven for some more years of separatism over there. Anyway, that is actually going to be it. So, as before, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you, hopefully again, in less than 9 months.